The Giants Causeway, located on the north coast of Northern Ireland in County Antrim, is one of the most iconic and recognizable natural wonders in the world. This formation has captivated visitors for centuries. The Giants Causeway was formed approximately 50 to 60 million years ago during the Paleocene epoch, as a result of intense volcanic activity in the region. At that time, the area was subject to significant geological changes as the ancient continent of Laurasia began to fragment, leading to the opening of the North Atlantic Ocean. During this period of volcanic activity, highly fluid molten basalt seeped through chalk beds, forming a substantial volcanic plateau. As the lava cooled and contracted, it fractured in a manner similar to drying mud, creating the distinctive hexagonal columns we see today. The cold waters of the ocean played a crucial role in giving the formation its unique shape. There are approximately 40,000 interlocking basalt columns, most of which are hexagonal in shape. However, some columns have 4, 5, 7, or even 8 sides. The columns vary in height, with the tallest reaching about 39 feet high. The solidified lava in the cliffs can be up to 92 feet thick in places. One of the more interesting aspects of the structure are the distinctive features formed by weathering and erosion over millions of years. These include the famous Giant's Boot and the Giant's Harp. Other notable features include the wishing chair and the Giant's Organ. While the scientific explanation for the Giants Causeway's formation is well established, the location is still rich in mythology and folklore. The most famous legend associated with the causeway involves the Irish giant Fionn Mac Cumhail, better known as Finn McCool. According to the legend, Finn was challenged to a fight by the Scottish giant Benandonner. To meet his rival, Finn built a causeway across the North Channel so that the two giants could face each other. However, when Finn saw the size of Benandonner, he realized his opponent was much larger than him and fled back to Ireland. In one version of the story, Finn's quick-thinking wife, Una, disguised him as a baby. When Benandonner arrived and saw the size of the baby, he assumed that its father, Finn, must be a giant among giants. Frightened by this possibility, Benandonner fled back to Scotland, destroying the causeway behind him to prevent Finn from following. China's rapid urbanization and economic growth over the past few decades have led to a unique phenomenon known as ghost cities, or under-occupied developments. These are large-scale urban areas that were built rapidly but initially remained largely uninhabited, creating eerie cityscapes of empty streets and vacant buildings. Local governments, relying heavily on land sales for revenue and pushed by GDP growth targets, initiated massive construction projects in anticipation of future population growth and urbanization. This strategy, while aimed at preparing for China's continued economic expansion, resulted in a mismatch between supply and demand in many areas. Ghost cities in China are typically characterized by newly constructed buildings and infrastructure with low occupancy rates, especially in their early years. Often located on the outskirts of existing cities, these developments showcase modern architecture and urban planning but lack the bustling activity one would expect in a thriving metropolis. One of the most famous examples is Kangbashi, a district in Ordos, Inner Mongolia. Initially designed for a population of 1 million, Kangbashi had only about 20,000 inhabitants in 2009. However, by 2019, its population had grown to 150,000, showing significant progress but still far below its intended capacity. Other notable examples include Tianducheng, which was once criticized as a ghost city but has since become a frequented area. While many ghost cities are filling up, challenges remain. The oversupply of housing in some areas continues to be a concern, as does the potential for real estate bubbles and associated economic risks. The need for diverse amenities to attract and retain residents is another ongoing challenge. Some experts argue that the develop now fill later approach has proven successful in certain cases, citing examples like Shenzhen and Pudong, which have transformed from underdeveloped areas into thriving communities. As of 2020, China was reported to have about 65 million empty homes, enough to house the entire population of France. On January 15, 2009, a wild event occurred that would come to be known as the Miracle on the Hudson. U.S. Airways Flight 1549, an Airbus A320 aircraft, made an emergency water landing on the Hudson River in New York City, resulting in the survival of all 155 people on board. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 was scheduled to depart from LaGuardia Airport in New York City, bound for Charlotte, North Carolina, on the afternoon of January 15th. The aircraft was under the command of Captain Chesley Sullenberger, with First Officer Jeffrey Skiles as his co-pilot. Captain Sullenberger was a highly experienced pilot with nearly 20,000 flight hours. First Officer Skiles, while new to this particular aircraft with only 37 hours on the type, had over 20,000 total flying hours. The flight took off from LaGuardia Airport at 3:25 p.m. Just minutes into the climb, at an altitude of approximately 2,800 feet and about 4 miles from the airport, the aircraft encountered a flock of Canada geese. The impact was so severe that it obscured the pilot's view through the windscreen. Almost immediately after the encounter with the birds, both of the aircraft's engines lost power. Despite this, the plane continued to climb for another 19 seconds before entering a descent. Captain Sullenberger took control of the aircraft while First Officer Skiles attempted to restart the engines. Just 22 seconds later, Sullenberger made a mayday call to air traffic control, calmly stating, "This is Cactus 1539, hit birds. We've lost thrust on both engines. We're turning back towards LaGuardia." Initially, Sullenberger requested to return to LaGuardia Airport. However, as the situation unfolded, it became apparent that reaching LaGuardia was not possible. The pilots then considered Teterboro Airport in New Jersey as an alternative landing site. Air traffic control cleared them for an approach to runway 1 at Teterboro, but Sullenberger soon realized that they wouldn't be able to make it there either. With limited options and rapidly losing altitude, Sullenberger made the critical decision to attempt a water landing on the Hudson River. At 3:31 p.m., just over 5 minutes after takeoff, Flight 1549 made contact with the Hudson River. Following the water landing, the focus immediately shifted to evacuating the aircraft. Passengers and crew members exited onto the wings and deployed emergency slides. The evacuation faced challenges due to water entering the fuselage through an open rear door and damage sustained during the landing. Fortunately, the aircraft was equipped for extended overwater use, which meant it had a full stash of life vests, and the exit slides could detach to be used as rafts. Since the landing site was close to New York City's waterways, it meant that help was able to arrive promptly after the landing. 2 NY Waterway ferries were the first to arrive at the scene, immediately beginning to take passengers aboard. They were soon joined by other boats, including Coast Guard vessels. Emergency services also assembled on the shore to assist. Following the incident, the National Transportation Safety Board conducted a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding the flight and subsequent water landing. The investigation examined all aspects of the incident, including the bird strike, the pilot's actions, and the performance of the aircraft and its systems. The NTSB ultimately determined that the probable cause of the incident was the ingestion of large birds into each engine, which resulted in an almost total loss of thrust in both. As part of the investigation, extensive flight simulator reenactments were conducted. These simulations focused on the possibility of returning to LaGuardia or diverting to Teterboro Airport. While some simulations with an immediate turn to an airport were partially successful, when a realistic reaction delay was added, the outcomes were less favorable. This analysis supported the conclusion that Captain Sullenberger's decision to land on the Hudson was the correct course of action. Gloomy Sunday, also known as the Hungarian suicide song, is a song that has sparked controversy for nearly a century. The song was composed in 1933 by Hungarian pianist and composer Rezo Seres, with lyrics written by poet Laszlo Javor. The creation of this occurred during one of history's darkest periods, set within the Great Depression and the rise of fascism in Hungary. The original Hungarian title of the song translated to "The World is Ending," and its initial lyrics focused on the despair caused by war, concluding with a quiet prayer about people's sins. However, it was Javor's version, translating to "Sad Sunday," that gained popularity. In this iteration, the protagonist contemplates suicide following the death of a lover. The song's notoriety began when it was first recorded in Hungarian by pop singer Pál Kalmár in 1935. Despite its melancholic tone, or perhaps because of it, the song quickly gained traction. It wasn't long before Gloomy Sunday crossed linguistic boundaries, with the first English recording made by Hal Kemp in 1936, featuring lyrics by Sam M. Lewis. The English version of Gloomy Sunday further cemented its reputation as a song associated with despair and suicide. Lewis's lyrics explicitly reference suicide, leading the record label to describe it as the Hungarian song. This title would stick, contributing to the song's growing infamy and the urban legends that would soon surround it. Eventually, reports started circulating about a series of suicides allegedly connected to the song. These stories, while largely unverified, contributed to the song's mystique and its reputation as a potentially dangerous piece of music. One of the earliest reported incidents involved a Budapest shoemaker who allegedly took his own life, leaving behind a note quoting the song's lyrics. Another tale speaks of a woman in Vienna who drowned herself while clutching the sheet music. In London, a woman reportedly overdosed on barbiturates while listening to the song on repeat. The rumors even spread outside of Europe. In the United States, there was a report of a 13-year-old boy in Michigan who hanged himself with the lyrics of Gloomy Sunday in his pocket. Another account tells of a college student in New York who shot himself after listening to the song. These stories, whether true or embellished, contributed to the growing urban legend surrounding Gloomy Sunday. Some accounts claim that the song was linked to over 100 suicides. However, it's crucial to note that most of these alleged connections are difficult, if not impossible, to verify. The notoriety of the song led to various reactions from authorities and broadcasters. In Hungary, there were claims that the song was banned from being played. More concretely, the BBC in England banned Billie Holiday's 1941 version of the song until 2002. The official reason given was that the song was too upsetting for the public, particularly during the challenging times of World War II. In the United States, while there were attempts to ban the song, they didn't gain much traction. Nebraskan Congressman Carl Stefan reportedly tried to ban the song in 1936, but admitted to not having listened to it himself. Perhaps the most tragic chapter in this saga is the fate of its composer, Rezo Seres. Despite the song's notoriety, or perhaps because of it, Seres struggled financially and emotionally throughout his life. The song's success seemed to haunt him, and he was quoted as saying, "I stand in the midst of this deadly success as an accused man. This fatal fame hurts me. I cried all of the disappointments of my heart into this song, and it seems that others with feelings like mine have found their own hurt in it." In a surprise turn of events, Seres took his own life in 1968 at the age of 69. He jumped from a window in Budapest, and when he survived the fall, he later strangled himself in the hospital. The smiley face killer's theory originated in the late 1990s and early 2000s when a series of drowning deaths of young men occurred across several Midwestern and Northeastern states in the US. These deaths shared some similarities that caught the attention of investigators and the public. The theory was primarily developed and promoted by two retired New York City police detectives, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, along with criminal justice professor Dr. Lee Gilbertson. They began investigating these cases after the death of Patrick McNeil, a Fordham University student who went missing in New York City in February 1997 and whose body was found in the East River about 2 months later. Gannon had initially worked on McNeil's case and promised the young man's parents that he would find out what happened to their son. This promise led Gannon to continue investigating similar cases even after his retirement from the NYPD in 2001. He enlisted the help of Duarte, his former partner, and together they formed nationwide investigations to look into these deaths. The victims in these cases typically fit a specific profile. They were predominantly young, college-aged men who were described as popular and athletic. Most of the victims were last seen leaving bars or parties, often in an intoxicated state. Their bodies were later discovered in rivers, lakes, or other bodies of water, sometimes weeks or months after their disappearance. One of the most high-profile cases associated with this theory is that of Chris Jenkins, a University of Minnesota student who went missing on Halloween night in 2002. His body was found in the Mississippi River 4 months later. Initially ruled an accidental drowning, Jenkins's case was later reclassified as a homicide in 2006 based on information from an informant, though no arrests have been made. Other notable cases include Dakota James, a 23-year-old Duquesne University graduate student who went missing in Pittsburgh in January 2017 and was found in the Ohio River in March of that year, and Brian Welzian, a 21-year-old Northern Illinois University student who disappeared on New Year's Day 2000 in Chicago and was found on a beach in Gary, Indiana 77 days later. The smiley face aspect of the theory comes from the claim that investigators found graffiti depicting smiley faces near some of the locations where the victims' bodies were discovered. Gannon and Duarte reported finding these symbols at about a dozen locations across several states, including Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Iowa. The detectives theorized that these smiley faces were a signature left by the killer or killers, possibly as a way of taunting law enforcement. However, it's important to note that the smiley faces were not found at all of the scenes, and when they were present, they varied in size, color, and style. Gannon, Duarte, and Gilbertson proposed that these deaths were not accidental drownings, as often officially ruled, but rather the work of an organized group of serial killers. They suggested that the killers were targeting specific types of victims, possibly out of envy or resentment. According to their theory, the killers would drug unsuspecting victims at bars or parties, abduct them, and hold them for a period of time. The victims would then be killed and their bodies dumped in bodies of water to make the deaths appear accidental. The investigators claimed that in some cases, there was evidence of torture or other foul play before the victims' deaths. The team has suggested that this group of killers is highly sophisticated, potentially communicating via the dark web to coordinate their activities across multiple states. They have estimated that there could be up to 100 victims of this purported killing group. Despite the attention this theory has received, it has been widely criticized and dismissed by law enforcement and other experts. There are several reasons for this skepticism. These include the lack of physical evidence, inconsistent details with the smiley faces, and other various inconsistencies. Additionally, many experts argue that these deaths can be explained by accidental drowning, often exacerbated by alcohol consumption. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, have investigated these cases and have not found evidence to support the serial killer theory. In 2008, the FBI released a statement saying, "To date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between these tragic deaths or any evidence substantiating the theory that these deaths are the work of a serial killer or killers. The vast majority of these instances appear to be alcohol-related drownings." Local police departments involved in these cases generally maintain that the deaths were accidental drownings, often involving alcohol. For example, the La Crosse Police Department in Wisconsin, which handled 8 of the cases associated with the smiley face killers theory, stated that no smiley face symbols were found in connection with any of their cases. Robert Pershing Wadow, born on February 22, 1918 in Alton, Illinois, holds the title of being the tallest person in recorded history. His life, though brief, included extraordinary growth, unique challenges, and a lasting legacy that continues to interest people to this day. His life began ordinarily enough. He was born weighing approximately 9 pounds, giving no indication of the unique growth that was to come. However, by the time he was 6 months old, it became apparent that Robert was no ordinary child. He had already grown to the size of an average 2-year-old, weighing around 30 pounds. This rapid growth continued throughout his childhood. At 5 years old, Robert stood 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 105 pounds, wearing clothing meant for teenagers. By the age of 8, he had surpassed his father's height of 5'11". Robert's growth was so rapid and unprecedented that his elementary school had to custom build a special desk to accommodate his size. This was just the beginning of the many adaptations that would be necessary throughout his life to accommodate his ever-increasing height. The cause of Robert's growth was an overactive pituitary gland, which was discovered during a medical checkup in 1929. This condition, known as hyperplasia of the pituitary gland, resulted in an excess production of human growth hormone. Unlike in most people, where growth stops after puberty, Robert's body continued to produce growth hormone throughout his life. This continuous growth presented numerous challenges. Robert's size put immense strain on his body, particularly his legs and feet. He had little sensation in his lower extremities, which made him prone to blisters and infections. These health issues would plague him throughout his life and ultimately contribute to his untimely death. Despite the adversities posed by his extraordinary height, Robert was known for his gentle nature and positive outlook. He was described as intelligent, friendly, and possessing a great sense of humor. He made efforts to live as normal a life as possible, participating in various activities and pursuing his interests. As a child, Robert was involved in the Boy Scouts, becoming the world's tallest Boy Scout at 7'4" when he was 13 years old. He enjoyed hobbies such as photography, stamp collecting, and playing the guitar, though his size eventually made some of these activities difficult. Robert's family encouraged him to play with his siblings and participate in family activities. In one memorable instance, Robert helped his siblings make $100 from a lemonade stand by showing off his height to customers who bought a drink. When he graduated from Alton High School in 1936 at the age of 18, Robert stood at 8 feet 4 inches tall. Following his graduation, he enrolled in Shirtleff College in Alton with the intention of studying law. However, Robert's college career was short-lived, lasting only one semester. The practical challenges of accommodating his size in a traditional college setting, combined with his growing fame, led him to explore other opportunities. One of the most significant aspects of Robert's public life was his association with the International Shoe Company. Due to his enormous feet, which measured 18.5 inches long and required size 37 AA shoes, Robert faced significant expenses in obtaining properly fitting footwear. A single pair of shoes could cost $100, equivalent to about $2,000 in today's currency. Recognizing an opportunity, the International Shoe Company offered Robert a unique arrangement. In exchange for free shoes, Robert agreed to tour the country promoting their products. This arrangement led to extensive travel, with Robert visiting 800 towns in 41 states and covering approximately 300,000 miles. While Robert's primary public role was with the International Shoe Company, he also had a brief stint with the circus. In 1936, he joined Ringling Brothers Circus, appearing in the center ring at prestigious venues like Madison Square Garden and Boston Garden. However, Robert was adamant about maintaining his dignity during these appearances. He refused to dress formally or appear in the sideshow, insisting on wearing regular clothes and being presented as a main attraction rather than a curiosity. In July 1940, while attending the Manistee National Forest Festival in Michigan, Robert developed a fatal infection. A blister caused by an ill-fitting brace on his ankle went unnoticed due to his lack of sensation. The infection quickly worsened, causing a high fever. Despite emergency surgery and blood transfusions, Robert's condition deteriorated rapidly. He expressed a desire to return home to Alton and attend his grandparents' golden wedding anniversary, but sadly, these wishes would go unfulfilled. Robert Wadow passed away in his sleep on July 15, 1940, at the young age of 22. To protect his remains, his family took extraordinary measures. They had a custom-made casket built measuring 10 feet 9 inches long and weighing 1,000 pounds. To prevent any potential grave robbing or disturbance, they had concrete poured over the vault containing Robert's casket. The story of Phineas Gage is one of the most famous and influential cases in the history of neuroscience. His incredible survival and the changes observed in his behavior after a severe brain injury provided early insights into the relationship between brain function and personality. On September 13, 1848, 25-year-old Phineas Gage was working as a railroad construction foreman for the Rutland and Burlington Railroad in Cavendish, Vermont. His job involved preparing the ground for laying railroad tracks, which included blasting away rock using explosives. The process required boring holes into the rock, filling them with blasting powder, and then using a tamping iron to pack sand on top of the powder before igniting the fuse. That day, around 4:30 p.m., Gage was using a 43-inch long, 13-pound iron rod to tamp the explosive powder into a hole. As he was doing this, his attention was momentarily distracted by his men working behind him. In that instant, the tamping iron sparked against the rock, igniting the powder prematurely. The resulting explosion launched the tamping iron like a rocket, propelling it through Gage's head. The iron rod entered Gage's left cheek near the angle of the jaw, passed behind his left eye, traversed the left frontal lobe of his brain, and exited through the top of his skull. The force of the explosion threw Gage onto his back, and the iron landed about 80 feet away, smeared with blood and brain. Remarkably, Gage remained conscious after this horrific injury. He was able to speak and even walk with little assistance. He was transported by ox cart to the nearby Cavendish Hotel where he was staying. About 30 minutes after the accident, Dr. Edward H. Williams arrived to examine Gage. Williams was astonished to find Gage sitting in a chair outside the hotel, conscious and able to recount the events of the accident. Dr. John Martin Harlow took charge of Gage's case around 6 p.m. that evening. Harlow's treatment involved cleaning the wound, removing bone fragments and damaged brain tissue, and replacing 2 large detached pieces of skull. He left the wounds partially open for drainage and applied dressings. Gage's hands and forearms, which had been severely burned, were also treated. Gage's recovery was long and difficult. He experienced periods of delirium and infection, and at one point his condition was so grave that his coffin was prepared. However, thanks to Harlow's persistent care, including draining abscesses and applying caustic agents to control infection, Gage gradually improved. By November 25th, about 10 weeks after the accident, he was strong enough to return to his parents' home in Lebanon, New Hampshire. Prior to the accident, Gage was described as a capable and efficient foreman, well liked by his men and regarded as a shrewd, smart businessman. However, following his recovery, significant changes in his personality were observed. Dr. Harlow, in his 1868 report, noted that Gage had become fitful, irreverent, indulging at times in the grossest profanity, manifesting but little deference for his fellows, impatient of restraint or advice when it conflicts with his desires. Harlow also observed that Gage was at times pertinaciously obstinate, yet capricious and vacillating, devising many plans of future operations, which are no sooner arranged than they are abandoned in turn for others appearing more feasible. These changes were so profound that Gage's friends famously remarked that he was, quote, no longer Gage. His previous employers felt they could not offer him his position again due to the change in his mind. Despite these reported changes, Gage's story did not end with his injury. Unable to return to his previous railroad job, Gage reportedly worked for a time as an attraction at P.T. Barnum's American Museum in New York City. However, this period of his life is not well documented. In 1851, Gage began working in a livery stable in Hanover, New Hampshire. Then, in August 1852, he was invited to Chile to work as a long-distance stagecoach driver on the Valparaiso-Santiago route. This job was demanding and required significant skills, suggesting that Gage had retained or regained considerable functional capacity. Gage worked in Chile for nearly 7 years before his health began to fail in mid-1859. He then left for San Francisco, where he lived with his mother and sister. In February 1860, Gage began experiencing epileptic seizures. He died on May 21, 1860, almost 12 years after his accident, due to status epilepticus. After Gage's death, Dr. Harlow arranged for his skull to be exhumed and studied. The skull, along with the tamping iron that caused the injury, was eventually donated to the Warren Anatomical Museum at Harvard Medical School, where they remain on display today. Phineas Gage's case has had a lasting impact on the fields of neuroscience and psychology. It is often cited in textbooks and continues to be a subject of study and discussion more than 170 years after the accident occurred. The case provided early support for the idea of cerebral localization, the concept that different regions of the brain are specialized for different functions. Specifically, it suggested a role for the frontal lobes in personality and social behavior, areas of study that continue to be important in modern neuroscience. Gage's story also highlighted the brain's capacity for plasticity and recovery. Despite severe damage to his frontal lobes, Gage was able to survive and even return to work, albeit in a different capacity. This has influenced modern approaches to rehabilitation after brain injury. While Phineas Gage's case is widely cited, it has also been the subject of considerable debate and controversy. One major point of contention is the exact nature and extent of the changes in Gage's personality and behavior. Some accounts have portrayed Gage as completely changed after the accident, unable to function in society or hold down a job. However, more recent scholarship has questioned these extreme portrayals. The fact that Gage was able to work as a stagecoach driver in Chile for several years suggests a level of functionality that contradicts the most severe accounts of his impairment. Another area of debate concerns the extent of Gage's brain damage. While early accounts assumed damage to both frontal lobes, more recent studies using modern imaging techniques have suggested that the damage may have been more limited, primarily affecting the left frontal lobe. There's also ongoing discussion about the degree to which Gage recovered over time. Some researchers have proposed a social recovery hypothesis, suggesting that Gage's functioning improved significantly in the years following his accident, possibly due to the structured nature of his work as a stagecoach driver. Heaven's Gate was an American new religious movement founded in 1974 by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. Applewhite was the son of a Presbyterian minister and a former soldier who had been fired from his teaching position at the University of St. Thomas in Houston over an alleged relationship with a male student. Nettles was a 44-year-old married nurse with an interest in theosophy and biblical prophecy. The circumstances of their meeting are unclear, with different accounts placing it at a hospital where Nettles worked. What is known is that Applewhite felt an immediate connection to Nettles, believing they had met in a past life. Nettles convinced Applewhite that extraterrestrials had foretold their meeting and that he had a divine assignment. In the early 1970s, the two immersed themselves in studying various spiritual and philosophical works. They read the Bible, focusing on New Testament passages related to Christology, asceticism, and eschatology. They also explored the writings of Helena Blavatsky, R.D. Laing, and Richard Bach, as well as science fiction by authors like Robert A. Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke. By June 1974, Applewhite and Nettles had solidified their beliefs. They concluded that they were chosen to fulfill biblical prophecies and possessed higher-level minds than other humans. They wrote a pamphlet describing Jesus' reincarnation as a Texan, which was a veiled reference to Applewhite. Furthermore, they identified themselves as the two witnesses described in the Book of Revelation. Applewhite and Nettles began referring to themselves as the Two, or the UFO 2, as they visited churches and spiritual groups to share their identities. They believed they would be killed, resurrected, and transported onto a spaceship in full view of others, an event they called the demonstration to prove their claims. The group gained its first follower in May 1974 when Sharon Morgan joined them, abandoning her children in the process. However, Morgan left the group a month later and returned to her family. This led to Applewhite and Nettles being arrested for credit card fraud, though the charges were eventually dropped. Applewhite did serve 6 months in jail for a separate incident involving a stolen rental car. After Applewhite's release in early 1975, he and Nettles began actively seeking followers. They published advertisements for meetings where they recruited disciples, referred to as the Crew. At these events, they claimed to represent beings from another planet called the Next Level, who were seeking participants for an experiment. They promised that those who agreed to take part would be brought to a higher evolutionary level. In April 1975, during a meeting with 80 people in Studio City, Los Angeles, Applewhite and Nettles revealed that they were the two witnesses from the Bible's end times prophecy. This meeting was described as momentous by all accounts, with Applewhite and Nettles presenting themselves as charismatic leaders with an important spiritual message. About 25 individuals joined the group following this event. In September 1975, Applewhite and Nettles held a significant meeting in Waldport, Oregon. Following this event, around 20 people sold all their possessions, said goodbye to loved ones, and disappeared from public view to join the group. This disappearance caught national attention, with Walter Cronkite reporting on it for CBS Evening News. From this point, Applewhite and Nettles, now calling themselves Do and Ty respectively, led nearly 100 members across the country. The group lived nomadically, sleeping in tents and sleeping bags, and begging in the streets. This period of isolation allowed the group to focus on their teachings about achieving a higher evolutionary level above human, which the leaders claimed to have already reached. Over the years, the duo used various aliases, including Bo and Peep. The group itself went through several name changes before settling on Heaven's Gate. At one point, it was known as a Human Individual Metamorphosis. In April 1976, the group stopped recruiting and became more reclusive. They instituted a rigid set of behavioral guidelines, including banning sexual activity and drug use. This shift marked a transformation from a loosely organized social group to a centralized religious movement comparable to a roving monastery. The theology of Heaven's Gate has been described by scholars as a mixture of Christian millenarianism, New Age concepts, and ufology. As such, it is often characterized as a UFO religion. Central to their belief system was the idea that followers could transform themselves into immortal extraterrestrial beings by rejecting their human nature. They believed they would ascend to heaven, which they referred to as the next level or the evolutionary level above human. Applewhite believed he was directly related to Jesus and considered himself to be Jesus' successor and the present representative of Christ on Earth. The group taught that Dew's bodily vehicle was inhabited by the same alien spirit that belonged to Jesus, while T was presented as God the Father. In October 1996, the group rented a large mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California, which they called the Monastery. Around this time, they also purchased alien abduction insurance that would cover up to 50 members and pay out $1 million per person. As the Hale-Bopp comet approached in March 1997, the group became convinced that this was the sign they had been waiting for. Applewhite recorded a video titled Dew's Final Exit, in which he spoke about mass as the only way to evacuate this Earth. Between March 22nd and March 26th, 1997, 39 members of Heaven's Gate, including Applewhite, committed mass suicide. They believed that by doing so, their souls would board a spaceship they thought was hiding behind the Hale-Bopp comet, which would take them to the next level. The members took phenobarbital mixed with applesauce or pudding and washed it down with vodka. They then secured plastic bags around their heads to induce asphyxiation. All were dressed identically in black shirts and sweatpants, brand new Nike Decades athletic shoes, and armbands reading Heaven's Gate Away Team. The bodies were discovered on March 26, 1997, after an anonymous tip, later revealed to be from former member Rio D'Angelo, was called into the San Diego County Sheriff's Office. The discovery shocked the nation and brought intense media scrutiny to the group and its beliefs. I cannot for the life of me pronounce this name, so I'm just calling this place Elville. This is a village and community on the island of Anglesey in Wales. It has gained worldwide fame for its extraordinarily long name, which is considered one of the longest place names in Europe and the world. Elville lies along the Menai Strait near the Britannia Bridge, which connects Anglesey to the Welsh mainland. As of the 2011 census, the village had a population of 3,107, with 71% of residents able to speak Welsh. The village is divided into two main sections: the upper village, which consists mostly of older residences, and the lower village, which contains newer commercial buildings and the railway station. The village's long name consists of 58 characters. The name can be broken up and each section can be translated into its own word. The first string being St. Mary's Church, the second meaning hollow, the third white, then hazel, near, rapid, whirlpool, St. Tysilio's Church, near again, and Red Cave. The extended name was not the village's original designation. Historically, the settlement was known simply by a shorter version that translated to just St. Mary's Church in the hollow of the White Hazel. The longer version was created in the 1860s as a publicity stunt to attract tourists to the area during the era of railway tourism. According to local lore, the name was invented by a local tailor, though the exact identity of this individual remains unknown. The extended name combines the original village name with references to nearby geographical features and the Church of St. Tysilio. The Winchester Mystery House, located in San Jose, California, is a mansion that has caught the public's imagination for decades. Its unusual architecture and the legends surrounding its construction have made it a popular tourist attraction and the subject of numerous books, television shows, and even a movie. However, the true story behind this architectural oddity is often obscured by myth and exaggeration. At the heart of the mystery is Sarah Lockwood Pardee Winchester, born in 1839 in New Haven, Connecticut. In 1862, she married William Wirt Winchester, whose family owned the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Their life together was marked by tragedy when their infant daughter, Annie Pardee Winchester, died of marasmus in 1866, living only a few weeks. Sarah's life took another tragic turn between 1880 and 1881 when she lost her mother, father-in-law, and husband in quick succession. These losses left her with a substantial inheritance from the Winchester fortune. In 1884, her eldest sister, Mary Converse, also passed away. Around this time, Sarah began developing rheumatoid arthritis, which would significantly impact her later life. In 1885, at the age of 46, Sarah Winchester decided to move from New Haven to California. Contrary to popular belief, this decision was not driven by supernatural guidance or guilt over the Winchester rifle's deadly legacy. Instead, it was likely influenced by her doctor's recommendation for a warmer, drier climate to alleviate her arthritis symptoms. Additionally, she had fond memories of traveling to San Francisco with her husband in the 1870s, and the advertising about California's weather and health benefits may have played a role in her decision. Upon arriving in California, Winchester invited her 3 remaining sisters to join her. In 1886, she purchased a 45-acre ranch near San Jose from John Hamm, which included a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse. She named her new home Lanada Villa, inspired by the Basque region Lanada Alavesa, which the property reminded her of. Sarah Winchester began renovating and expanding Lanada Villa shortly after purchasing it. Contrary to the myth of continuous around-the-clock construction for 38 years, the expansion was more measured and practical. Winchester and her husband had developed an interest in architecture and interior design while building a home in New Haven, which likely influenced her approach to the California property. Initially, at least 2 architects were hired, but they were later dismissed. Winchester then opted to design the rooms herself. She supervised the project and sought advice from the carpenters she employed. Her inspiration came partly from the World's Fairs that were popular at the time. While the scope of the home was similar to other large residences of the era, it was unusual for a woman to oversee such a project, potentially making Winchester an architectural pioneer of her time. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake had a significant impact on the Winchester house. Contrary to rumors that Sarah was trapped inside during the quake, there is no evidence to support this claim. In fact, she owned several homes in California and likely spent most of her time at her Atherton residence after the earthquake. The earthquake caused severe damage to Lanada Villa. The 7-story tower and most of the chimneys collapsed, and an entire wing was destroyed along with the 3rd and 4th story additions. Winchester had the rubble removed, but did little else to repair the property after the earthquake. This event left many of the house's famous oddities, such as doors opening to nothing, pipes protruding from former window boxes, and staircases ending abruptly. One of the most persistent myths about the Winchester Mystery House is that construction continued non-stop for 38 years until Sarah Winchester's death in 1922. However, historical evidence suggests otherwise. Winchester would take regular breaks from construction, sometimes for months at a time, due to her health issues. This significantly slowed the building process and contradicts claims of round-the-clock construction. After 1910, due to failing health, Winchester did little work on the San Jose home except for odd maintenance jobs and the addition of an elevator in 1916. During this time, she focused more on her finances and building an investment portfolio. According to historian Mary Jo Ignafo, she was far more successful constructing an investment portfolio than a mansion. When Sarah Winchester died in 1922, the house had approximately 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. While certainly large and complex, these numbers are far from the often cited 500 rooms claimed in some accounts. The transformation of the Winchester house into a tourist attraction began shortly after Sarah's death in 1922. At the time, the house was in disrepair and considered to have no monetary value. A group of investors purchased the property and leased it to John and Mamie Brown, who turned it into an attraction. The Browns later bought the house in 1931. The transformation of Sarah Winchester's story from that of a grieving widow with chronic health issues to a superstitious, guilt-ridden recluse obsessed with spirits seems to have been a gradual process driven largely by profit motives. In 1924, Harry Houdini briefly visited the house and was reportedly impressed by its unusual layout and architectural novelties. According to some accounts, Houdini suggested using Winchester Mystery House as a promotional name for the property, though this claim is difficult to verify. The mystique surrounding the house grew significantly in the 1970s and 1980s when Keith Kittle, a former Disneyland and Frontier Village employee, became the general manager. Kittle oversaw renovations to the house and initiated an aggressive advertising campaign, including large highway billboards featuring a silhouetted house and implications of possible ghost encounters. This marketing strategy played off the existing rumors and superstitions, significantly increasing attendance.